Okay, thank you for coming. I need to say first of all, I'm not a senior marker, I'm a pilot marker. Catherine McDougall was the senior marker for this and she's not able to come tonight, so I was asked if I could. I've been a pilot marker for a number of years. Marked question 11 many years ago, but I've been marking extended responses for a number of years, and it was quite a learning curve, but also allowed me to be more positive, I suppose, in terms of on-screen marking and marking this last year. I worked at OMC Paramount. Now, this is what I intended doing, but it could end up a little bit different. I thought we'll look at the syllabus just to see the range of possibilities. We'll look at the particular question last year, which was an interesting question, but when you look at the syllabus, you can see where it's come from. And I've just got one other kind of marker feedback from this, from last year. And then another year's marker feedback, and then just some general questions or general ways to approach answering question 11. And then, you can ask questions about the process or general questions with time. And I didn't do any handouts or anything, so I hope you don't mind. I've just brought one copy of the paper to point out a couple of things. So this is half the syllabus for this part of the topic. And as you know, there's 10 model choice. So this is half of it. And when you look at that, there's the learn about, the facts, and then what the students should be able to do, what they learn to do. So I'll just give you a moment to look at that. There's a lot of possibilities there. That's half the syllabus when you've got 10 model choice functions. So, I was thinking, so maybe if you think about how many questions can you think of from that, so I'll just go back. And you know, we kind of look at it and we think, well, that question was asked a couple of years ago or last year, so they probably won't ask it now. So we have a bit of an idea of some questions. I think last year's question was a little bit different. And it seems that a lot of students had prepared something else, and they were going to write that down, but So, when you look at that, how many questions is there possible? You can mix up different things, so there's a lot. Yeah, so you've got that one, and then this is the what. Now, when we look at that, can you see where last year's question came from? Can you remember what last year's question was? Yeah, that's coming. Okay, well, I'll read it. In what ways has dispossession continued to affect Aboriginal spiritualities? How does that fit in there? If we look at the line about, where's it come from? Okay, but even above that, it's got issues for, and it seems that's what that's what they really need to look at. Where maybe we gloss over that, and we teach them the effect of dispossession, and we're looking at the land rights movement. It's interesting because I haven't really looked at the syllabus until I was preparing this, and I looked at it and thought, that's right, it's there, issues. Issues for Aboriginal spiritualities in relation to that. Discuss the continuing effect, there's the question, but we're looking at the issues in relation to the effect of dispossession. So it's definitely there. So this is the question. What are the key words here? I'll just let you, maybe you can write them down and think about it. You don't have to share it as such, but, or you might. I'll give you, look at it, talk to each other. What do you think are the key words there? Yeah. And that's the word that most students didn't really notice. Okay? The marking guidelines had, continues. It had to be not stopped. Had to be continuing, and that's where it was clear discriminator. with that. I was trying to think, it's a while since I might have been in November, but I was thinking through some of the ways that some students approached it. So someone had an outline of the land rights movement. It's not really very relevant to it, but that's what a lot wrote. How dispossession came about, all about dispossession. The history, some of them had lots of examples. Social costs of dispossession. Some of them it was more like a society culture, inequality. Like when I used to teach society culture, we had lots of statistics that wasn't necessarily relevant. The consequences leading to loss of access to sacred sites, to enlightened spirituality, even loss of some Aboriginal spiritualities. That's getting a bit closer to it. Ongoing difficulties faced attempting to provide evidence. I spelled that wrong. Did I? Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to. Connection to land when tribal groups had been removed from their land, making delays before the claim was before the courts. Meaning death of Indigenous elders who actually held the oral tradition or would take the judges there to say this is where we did this is the evidence, this is the story about this tree or whatever it might be. Now, in a later slide, we'll go through it quickly, but I wrote in terms of this question, it's a lucky dip, right? I tell my students, this is a lucky dip, you have to learn it all. Now, my school was quite fortunate with this lucky dip because we set the first task was one where they had to research particular land rights cases and be aware of those that had taken a long time to resolve. So they saw that some as 25 years, 20 years, some claims that aren't resolved as yet. So they had a specific example, and if they shared those examples, they could write about that. So when I was marking it, saw the question, the marking criteria, and I thought, I'm hoping some of our girls will realise that what they did for their first task would be helpful for this. And then when we got the RAP data, I saw that I think the average for the state was 3 and ours was higher than that, a bit higher. So, our choice of task, and we should give a different task for the first one. We've tried to do different things to get them thinking, researching. It paid off for this question, but it's only 5-mark question, so it's not going to have a huge impact, but they did have up-to-date evidence that we put there, and they had that sense of ongoing. So when you look at this, the key words, in what ways has dispossession continued, as you all said, continued to affect Aboriginal spiritualities? Now, what a lot, and the first number of those there, they didn't really talk about Aboriginal spirituality, let alone spiritualities. So they really needed to cover the fact that it's Aboriginal spirituality, that's what you're looking at the impact on. Their ability to enliven, to nurture, and to maintain their specific spirituality by linking to their sacred sites, being able to tell their stories, keeping their language. So a lot of some students, spoke about language, spoke about loss of language, but then spoke about languages that have been recorded, so it's there. That sense of having contact with the land. But they also spoke about the frustration of the delays in the courts. That's really inhibited much of the Indigenous being able to actually know, learn, connect with their specific spirituality. But acknowledging the fact that each tribal group has their own specific spirituality. So some that sort of were on the mark spoke as if there's one Aboriginal spirituality. Some, not that many, but some said how it's completely gone, it can never be retrieved. So, where were they when it was being taught to them? But there were some that were great. So there tended to be a small number that were brilliant, some that were okay, but lots were around the 3. Okay. So I've probably told you what it requires. So maybe write down based on what I've said, if you want to just write down what you think you probably have done already. But do you want to have a little buzz about that? What this requires?
How many lines did they get to write?
It's 3 lines a night, 15 lines.
So that's 15.
Yeah, 15 lines. So I'll just leave you with that, and then I only brought the one, sorry, but just to point out about, because it's on screen marking, that's the other significant thing you need to know.
What happens if they put it online?
Yeah, I'll talk about that in a second. The important thing is to be integrating terminology, and if possible, specific examples. So that's that sense that the intergenerational transfer of that knowledge, that spirituality, has been hampered. Attendance rights, initiation rights, balance rights, all those sorts of things. So
the British referring to the syllabus to all allegations to that, or kinship work, they can say that is no longer able to do.
yeah. So it was disappointing that some students out, I suppose I've got this here, we can talk about this. When I had a good look at this when I was preparing, I realised this is the only page that has the little corner marks there. I didn't quite know what to call those, so I was trying to find out. I do have a slide with that. Go back to that. Some students, it's pretty obvious that they're like, we all have students like it. They read the question and they think, right, I'm going to answer this. And they write, and they get to about here, and then they think, I haven't answered what's asked. So then they start writing really close, and they keep coming down. You go down to there, and then they start writing sideways, and they do an arrow, and they might write the other side, which makes it interesting to read. You know, if it's scanned, and this is a question I was asked, if it's scanned, it can only read what's inside those. That's all that gets scanned. Now, for the years that this has been on-screen marked, it's marked corporate because all the other markers in their groups marking their questions, like with the paper, and the teachers marking this question, they're in another area with carpet, so they don't trip over the cords and that. So they're in a corner and marking on screen. The monitors are massive, which is great. That's a plus because if the writing is such you're having trouble reading, you can increase, you can make it larger. But some of them you realise the students written beyond. Now, because this is the only question marked on screen for studies religion, it means that the papers are there where you are as well. So they can be, you can say, the marker will say to the senior marker, in this case it was Catherine McDougall, look, we can't read it, it's continued over there. Or we've come down here, there seems to be more because it's finished mid-phrase. So the marker gives the number and then that's given to the clerical people and they will find the paper and any others that they know they can't scan and they were actually paper marked. Now, I don't know whether that will continue or not, because you know how we tell the students, we try to tell us, we tell them, we hope that they comprehend that you need to write within this space. Sometimes you have a student who has very large writing, so it's probably good to say to them, use the space, and they can ask for a booklet, right? And they can write in a booklet, and that will get scanned with this. And so it tells us that it's 2 pages. You understand it? Rather than, please tell them not to squash up here, right to the bottom, or right to the edges. In the past we might say, you've got big writing, write all the way across and it's fine because the marker gets this and you can see it all, but that's not the case now. So, particularly if they've got large writing, we could say, well, get a booklet. It's expected that the questions are set by the examiners that the expectation is the average student can answer in this space. So if a student has an answer and they've got some terminology they've looked at, continued to impact, they've talked about something there that gives an idea they understand there is a diversity of Aboriginal spirituality, we need to look at it and think, well, looking at the marking criteria, why wouldn't it get 5? Because they've used the lines that are there. But if they've got a whole lot that's irrelevant and then attempted to answer it, well, it's not necessarily going to get there. So writing, 2 pages isn't going to guarantee the mark.
One of the issues I've found with the students is that they tend to feel like they need to give elaborate definitions of everything, like the market has never studied the subject before.
Yeah.
Is it good advice to say to them, look, you need to take it as a given that the marker is going to understand what you mean when you use certain definitions and terminology? You don't have to elaborate on everything.
No, definitely. They need to integrate terminology so that they're doing it at a high level, because weaker students want to define everything and I'll say, oh, I wrote all of this. They should be using, as in any other subject, they should be using the terminology integrated in their response so that they're showing their articulate and comprehensive understanding of the subject matter and then using it to answer a specific question. Does that make sense? Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions? And there were quite a few that were, like there was a big bundle and I think they found some more that needed to be paper marked. I actually enjoyed it. When I was asked to mark them, and I just felt like you were actually marking when you hang on to it, because it's what we're used to. But there were certain benefits from on the screen. Right? And I'll talk a little bit about the process when I go through this. Now, I only discovered this very recently, so I didn't realise that I know we did mark a comment. So this is the comments. Have you seen this? Most of you have. Now this is very general, but this is what we all wrote some comments in the book, and then it was put together by the SOM and Cass. So this is from the Boston's website. I didn't include that there, but that's where I got it from. So identifying the effects, students showed strength identifying the effects of dispossession on Aboriginal spiritualities, supporting the response with reference to specific aspects of Aboriginal spirituality, so there would be your terminology. Some of them might have had specific examples. Integrating relevant and accurate terminology throughout the response. So that's where that sense of integrating rather than here's a definition. Candidates need to improve, so this is what we need to take note of. Addressing the specific requirements of the question by focusing on the continuing effects of dispossession. And that's what was really lacking for many. On Aboriginal spiritualities rather than the past effects. So they were very good at talking about past effects. They didn't answer the question, which was continued, so they need to have continuing. So if there was something where they mentioned that this was ongoing, then they could be paid. In some way that, if they're talking about, future generations need to, and then they had everything else right, then it's okay. So they had to address that fact of what's going to be continuing. Referring to effects of Aboriginal spirituality rather than effects on culture. This was many wrote about culture and not the spirituality. And I think I've seen that a bit with a number of my students. So we need to be very careful, show them the syllabus and say it's on spiritualities. Okay, it's not culture. And I know we would all do that, but we have to really maybe, revising and say this is what you've really got to look at. Remind them to use the terminology so it's pretty obvious that that's what they're writing about. If they're not using the terminology, then they're probably not covering it as they should. Making specific reference to aspects of Aboriginal spiritualities rather than generalisations about land and dreaming. Some of them wrote this great response on dreaming, land and dreaming, but it wasn't what the question asked for. If they had given some specific examples about the dreaming, then and looking about the ongoing effects on the dreaming, they would have been able to get there. So it's a matter of there's no one way to answer most questions in our subject. It's where you come from and what evidence you provide to answer the specific question. So they could have perhaps started with that and gone and had something that was relevant, but many of them left it at dreaming, thinking dreaming equates with spirituality, and left it there without really looking to see the effect, continued effect of dispossession. So, thank you. Do you want to look at that a little bit longer? Or? It is on the website. I think I just looked at Bosti's HSC SOR 2015 marker feedback or something like that.
Can you just unpack the last point there a little bit?
The last one. So they might have been writing something about dreaming, a specific example, dreaming whether it's rainbow, serpent, or for a particular group, but it was a dreaming response rather than looking at the effect of disposition. So this is probably an example where they'd learned dreaming, and knew a lot about that, specific examples, and that's what they'll put in there.
So if they had to say, because of dispossession from the land, they would be unable to fulfil their ritual obligations to maintain their connection with their particular dreaming story.
That would be, depending what else they said, because that might not be what these students have written. So it's generalisations about dreaming. So it's focusing on dreaming without really looking at that connection with this to enliven, enrich, deepen their spirituality and allow that to be handed on. You see, like they've got this bit, and in what you said, you're sort of getting there. Might be around the 3, but they'd have to say a bit more with that sense of, are they talking about spiritualities? If they're just describing the spiritualities, they're not answering ongoing impact to continue, how it's going to continue into the future. What's impeding the future?
Okay.
They need to address that.
Yeah. So it sounds like, in what you've said, it's attempted to do it, but it's not going to get there. Depend what is said as the evidence to support that. Yeah.
Sorry, can I just ask a question in terms of referring to spirituality rather than the effects on culture? So if the students sort of wrote about cultural fragmentation in terms of them not being able to pass on their understanding of ritual to younger generations, they wouldn't get marks for that?
That would be getting there. Like some students are writing that, they're away from the, what it might be, it's more looking at the fact that their lifestyle has changed. So it's sort of culture rather than their spirituality. They haven't written about spirituality. They don't realise that dreaming spirituality is that sense of responsibility to the land, being aware of those and ongoing obligations that need to be fulfilled, that connection to the, being able to connect with the sacred sites. Okay, ask the next question.
No, that's okay.
You sure?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because you write down some points, everybody writes down points in an exercise book and then it gets collated. So this is very, very much condensed.
Yeah, I would have just sort of seen the two as inextricably connected, that's all.
Yeah.
But isn't it where
But it only is if the student writes that, because some of them are writing about they can't talk their language, they've lost their language, but they don't link that to that sense of loss of the spirituality.
Yeah, okay, right.
So they can use the words, but it's the next little bit. So it's like, how students can get the basis and they understand, and then the next lesson you ask them a question, you realise
they need to make the link.
They need to make the link, and that's what, there's potential in a lot of them, but what they're writing about isn't really going that little bit further.
Yeah.
I've seen it marking once, it was a while ago, but it was a question 11 and a lot of them were writing about sort of alcohol and
Yes.
it was a question on dispossession, and a lot of them were talking about, say, people walking over the Harbour Bridge was a really good example of reconciliation, but they didn't then make the connection to spirituality.
Yeah.
So it was more a disconnected way of, and that's sort of how I interpret life.
And that's what where they're writing about, that it's leading to, because of the loss of dreaming, the loss of identity, then they turn to alcohol, drug abuse.
Yeah.
That's not spirituality.
No, that's right. Yeah, I understand.
And that's what,
Yeah.
some were very much caught up with that. So it's that sense that it is, we can acknowledge that that's a serious problem, but the question focuses on spirituality.
I can see
Is that
that.
your final point that you want them to get to?
They really need to acknowledge the different, originally there were, 900 language groups, and now it's down to, a couple hundred. Many of the sacred lands are no longer accessible. They have been, and they'll never be accessible to them. They might give specific examples, so they might talk about those who've been at missions. So, say last year I was at Beagle Bay, so when I went to Beagle Bay, some of the Indigenous people there, they have their spirituality there because it's their tribal land. But for others, they've come from other parts, so their spirituality is very minimal because they don't know their tribal lands, so that they don't have that. But some of the others do, so they have their language, they have access to their sacred sites. They can go and have initiation rituals and other rituals and ceremonies. So it's that sense that some have access, some Indigenous tribes have access to their sacred sites and they have their language, whereas others it's completely lost. And others know what their land is and they've got court cases trying to get access to that land and they're taking a very long time to go through the courts. So last year, one of the ones that it just come through was 25 years before it was resolved. Some others, it's, as I said, what is needed. So while the solution is land rights, and people think, land rights, it's all good, there needs to be that, the evidence of the ongoing connection, and that may not be available because the elders, as I said, have died. So it's specific examples to show ongoing, and that loss of 900 languages to this. If the language is no longer alive and used, then the spirituality is not. But we need to also make sure the students realise that for many tribal groups, the spirituality is functioning and it's working out okay. They can pass it on. And as I said, it's quite many areas in Western Australia, Queensland. Actually, when I was looking at this, there was a map I came across on the Creative Spirits website. It's something they put there on the 5th of May, just this year. And it has a map of Australia, and on that map it shows the areas of land where land rights have been given, and most are in Western Australia. The least are in New South Wales and Victoria, and there's not very many in Northern Territory.